Please join me in welcoming our Global UMD Lifetime Achievement Award honoree, Chris Pellier.
Wow, that was quite something. I'm deeply indebted to the person who put that together, and obviously for the warm, generous comments made not only by my family, but some of my very, very dearest friends. Let me begin by saying how honored and humbled I am to have given this award by the United Macedonian Diaspora. And I do remember when Mento called and told me that they were going to do this, and it's a Lifetime Achievement Award. I said, okay, I got a lot more things to do. I mean, I get this when your time's up. And Mento was quite good about it all. He said, well, you know what? Keep going, and we'll give you another one. So I hate to tell you this, but 3 years we might be back doing this one more time. I would like to obviously thank Vana for her very kind comments and to tell you how proud I am of her and how happy I am to share the stage with her. As she said, we grew up in the same hood, and who would have thought that two Macedonian kids living near Don Mills and O'Connor one day would be receiving these awards together, but I couldn't think of anybody more that I'd want to share it with than her. Again, I'd like to thank, as Marilyn had said, my friends who are here, my relatives who are here, and my friends from the legal community. I can't tell you how touched I am by having you here. It means a great deal to me and my family. And let me recount for you, if I may, the same kind of story that Vana told you, that the journey for us, her and me, has been long, and it is rooted in the parents and the grandparents that we had. Growing up, I lived with my grandparents and my parents, and an uncle and my sister. There were 7 of us in one small house. And in that kind of a setting where Macedonian was my first language, as it was for my sister, you culturally learn what being Macedonian is and what it means to you. And so from that was forged the kinds of values and love I have for things Macedonian. And I can tell you that my father was 13 when he came to Canada. He came with no education. He came with no money. He came with a desire for a better life for himself and hopefully for future generations. And he came, and he was a shoeshine boy. He came in 1927. He was 13 years old. And he came because life in Macedonia, that portion of Macedonia currently occupied by Greece, was oppressive. And he wanted to make himself a better life. And he did what Macedonians ultimately did. And I just skip ahead 20 years. He, by that time, was married to my wonderful mother, who is here with us tonight. My mother is 94. I love her dearly, and but for my parents, I wouldn't be here. They were so encouraging throughout my career, which was checkered at times, but finally found its way to becoming a lawyer. But so my father went into the restaurant business, which is what Macedonians did. And some of you may not know this, but in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, the restaurant business in Toronto was, except for Chinese restaurants and except for very high-end restaurants, were principally run by Macedonians. And there's a book that I have that I cherish called Men in White Aprons. And it was a thesis of a non-Macedonian person from the University of Toronto who wrote about Macedonians and restaurants. And I was looking through it before I came to give this speech, and there were in that time frame, in about the 50s, when he did his research, at least 600 restaurants in Toronto owned by Macedonians. That's what we did. And so I was a product of that. And so kids would go off to camp. I went off to work in my dad's restaurant. I worked in my dad's restaurant from the time I was 13. That was my summer job. And you know, you might think that that's kind of an interesting thing to do. It played havoc with my social life. Why is that? Well, I went to high school, and as Eva said, you know, I was the captain of the football team, and I did this and that, and I'd have dates, oddly enough, and so, but, let me tell you, when Betty the waitress didn't show up on Friday, there was a call to my house, and the dates all went by the boards, and so there you are trying to phone somebody at 7 o'clock to say, you know, remember that movie we were going to go and see? Well, if you want to stop by for a Coke and some chips, you know, you're more than welcome. So that was how I grew up. Now, you'd think that by the time I got to be a lawyer, that would have come to an end. So, this is, I did it all through university. So, just picture this. I'm now a lawyer, and I'm called to the bar, and I was doing some criminal law in those days, and I can vividly remember this day. Went to court, did what I needed to do, got back to the office. It's about 11:15. The phone rings. It's my mother. What are you doing? So I just got back from court, and she said, well, what are you doing for lunch? So she wasn't calling for a date. Sometimes parents want to take their kids out for lunch. Not a chance. So she said, Betty didn't come in today. Would you like to come up for lunch? So I jump on the subway, up I go, and the reason it was men in white aprons is because it's different today, but you wore these long aprons with a string around them to keep your pants clean so that the slop didn't get on your pants, and you would tuck the order form in the string that held up the thing. Anyway, so up I go, and on that particular day, there were these lawyers that would eat in my dad's restaurant every day. They had their offices nearby, and I had been fortunate enough to have a case in the Court of Appeal, and they get these things called the Ontario reports that record precedent-setting cases. So I had done this case, and so I take the order from these guys, the bacon and tomato and the, so let me just, so I at this point, I'm a BLT. Except that, I'm a BTL, I'm a big-time lawyer. But here I am taking orders for BLTs. So I get their order, and I bring the order, and it's soup and this and that, and I put it down, and these guys, because it's lunchtime, they end up reading the orders, and one of them says, look, I'm just reading this, is this you? So, so that's in about my first year of law. I supplemented my income by going to work at my dad's restaurant. So, but it made you a better person, and I can't tell you what that experience was like of working with my parents, who I truly loved and admired. And I remember my girls saying to me as they were going through school, they had two parents who are lawyers, we're never going to be lawyers. Why is that? You work too hard. And I'd say, look, what I do is wonderful. I love what I do. What my parents did was hard work. That was hard work. And they did it, and they did it for us, and I can't thank them enough, and I think it's true for most of the people who are here. I know Marilyn told me I had 3 or 4 minutes, but I have to tell you about a couple of things that were and have been important in my life as a Canadian Macedonian. And although my father came here when he was 13, my mother was born here. This lovely woman who's here, 94 years. We've been here for pretty much 100 years, and so we are Canadians, but we do love our roots. So one of the things that I had an opportunity to do was to represent our people at international human rights conferences. They were in Moscow, Helsinki, and Warsaw in 1991, 93, and 96, and I was assisted ably by my wonderful quadrilingual wife, who is charming and relentless, and was extraordinarily helpful at trying to shine a light in the international setting on the violation of the human rights of our people in that portion of Macedonia currently occupied by Greece. And so we went, this was under the auspices of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE, part of the Helsinki Accord process. And we did shine that light on these abuses, and that things are slightly better, I can tell you, in Macedonia, that portion of Macedonia that's in Greece. Now, we just came back. Eva and I and our daughters, Zoe and Julia, just had a marvelous trip for 10 days in which we went to visit the place where my father was born in that portion, and it's a place called Tosia, and it's an abandoned town because the Greek people, the government forced all the people out of it, so it's an abandoned town, but it's important for us to go and to share that. It was wonderful to see some of those pictures from our trip. So that was a very important thing for me to be able to do. And I remember once when I came back, somebody said, well, how long have you lived in Canada? One of my colleagues said, well, I was born here. My mother was born here. I said, why did you go? And I said, because I could and I can. And it was a skill that I had. And I must say it was one of the highlights of my career as a lawyer, being able to go to those international conferences. The second thing I want to tell you about that's been very moving for me is being on the board of CMP, Canadian Macedonian Place. It's a very, very important part of our community for all the reasons that Marilyn said about the people who are in the twilight years from the Macedonian community to be able to have their language and culture and food and all of that. And what's the common denominator between those two things that I've just told you about? There's one common denominator: John Biddulph Sr. The one thing you know about John, and I love him like a father, is you can never, never, never say no to John Biddulph. When he calls and says, we're starting this old age home, I want you on it, you gotta help me, I could never say no. Ask me about the international work, like as if I had nothing to do with it. Maybe this was before I had gone to Moscow. I said, John, you want me to go? I'll go. And Eva willingly went. And so none of this would have been possible without John's mentoring. He is a hero to me, and he's someone who I try to emulate. He eats, breathes, sleeps Macedonia. And the last person I would like to thank is my wife, Eva, who has been tireless in all of this in terms of helping me achieve some of these goals. And she has been an inspiration to me, and we have together inculcated those values that we think are important, particularly the values of social justice, the values of fairness, the values of equality, the importance of human rights for all people, the ability to speak your own language, worship in your own religion, the kinds of things that our people cannot do in that northern part of Greece. And so I thank you, Eva, for all of that. And I also thank Methil for